Brie, good evening. Thank you so much for joining me yet again on the All Around Adventure podcast. Welcome back.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to catching up with you. You know, the last time we had you on here a couple years ago, you had just finished your third of the seven summits. You have this goal to do the seven highest mountains on all seven continents. And but now you had just completed number five. So we're going to be talking about that here in this episode. But kind of getting into this, though, one thing I really kind of want to ask you is just, why? Why have you decided to undertake this arduous goal of doing all seven summits? Because it's time intensive, it's equipment intensive, financially intensive. So take us back a little bit. Like, when did you initially get this idea to do all seven summits?
Completely agree on all of those. And I think when these are done, I need to find a new hobby, one that's maybe not as expensive. I started it so back in Kilimanjaro was the first mountain. I was working as an Africa FAO, still in the Marine Corps full time, not doing the reserves yet. And I was down in Uganda all the time, knew a couple of people who had gone and climbed Kilimanjaro. And so I figured I would give that a try since I was so close. It was once in a lifetime, might as well go and do it. It was a lot easier, honestly, than I thought it was going to be. That one was just kind of like a very long hike. It was beautiful, though, great experience. And one of the reasons I think I have enjoyed it so much is the people that you meet on these. They are very adventurous. They're out pushing the limits, testing themselves. And so on that climb, I met so many other people who were like working towards the seven summits. I'd never really heard of it, wasn't a thing I had even crossed my radar to have as a goal. Figured I would try at least one more, see if it was something I wanted to continue. And then by that point, I started to enjoy it a little bit more. And then I did Aconcagua, which is the one we talked about last time, much more challenging than the first two. And at that point, I wanted to continue on. So then it's just become more and more of a goal.
So how did you kind of deal with the contrast of climbing up mountains? Because I'm sure your audience kind of knows you as one who likes to seek out warmer destinations, beaches, and sunshine. But here you are going up mountains where it's negative in the teens degrees and everything like that. So how did you kind of deal with that contrast when you started going up some of these mountains?
To be fair, I still hate cold weather. If it's below 50 degrees, I'm in a jacket. Even now, I'm like at home and it's 70 degrees in the house and I have a little puff on. I don't enjoy being cold, but I think the challenge of it, like finding something that you have the possibility of failing at, is really healthy. And it's just a good mindset, I think, to continually challenge yourself to do things that are maybe next level and you have to actually work hard. There is a good possibility of failure on them. And I think anyone in the military has kind of learned to appreciate suffering. And that's a skill that you are given in the military, no matter what branch. Marine Corps especially prides themselves on suffering and wearing it as a badge of honor. But I think this was just a way that I was able to kind of continue that in a very limited capacity now that I've switched over to the reserve. So it's just a good way to continue challenging myself. And so it's worth it to suck it up and deal with the cold for a little bit. Small periods of times I can manage through. And also like better gear makes a massive difference. My first climb, I definitely had like my Walmart brand light jacket on and it was miserable. And even dealing with like much colder mountains has been substantially easier when you have nicer gear. So but that goes to your financial part and commitment to this that you mentioned in the beginning.
So you mentioned that Kilimanjaro was a much more hikeable mountain, not very technical, didn't really need any specialized training to make it to the top. So at like what point did you kind of start seeking out that level of training? Was there like a certain mountain that you had faced not long after where you kind of knew that you need like maybe some crevasse like self-rescue skills, maybe some like ice axe skills or anything along those lines?
Yeah, it was after doing Elbrus, the one in Russia. So that's the highest in the continent of Europe. And you have a little bit like you wear crampons on it. You learn basic like self-rescue, how to like self-arrest on the mountain. So if you start slipping, you know how to like use your ice axe to grab onto the mountain. After that one, when I thought about then looking at the next mountains, what were some of the requirements? Because you do basically submit, I've done all mine through expeditions and climbs that were led by organizations organizations or individuals. And most of them, you submit basically a climbing resume and saying, here, I've done all of these things. So I kind of started looking up what are the criteria for the next mountains that would be on the list. And then when I was over in Germany, I did a handful. It was very convenient to be located in Stuttgart, and I was able to drive down, and I did a lot of the courses down in Chamonix to do basic ice climbing, the crevasse, the rescue training. So that was really the point, that I was looking at next mountains. What would I need to do to make it a possibility, and did most of it while I was over there.
So now the seven summits that you've done so far, did you do them in the order that you had initially planned? Like, did you actually, after Kilimanjaro, lay all these out in the way that you have actually done them? Or was it more just like when an opportunity presented itself to go up one? How did that all play out?
Well, every good plan fails with the first contact. So
Right.
I thought I had a great plan of like, okay, I'm going to gain a little bit more technical expertise. I'm going to do this one next. And then life throws you curveballs. So COVID happened, and that canceled all of the climbs that I had planned on doing. So I'd actually started looking at doing Vinson Massif back in 2020, and then they canceled it for a few years. So that one got pushed later dates. I flew all the way out to Indonesia 3 years ago to climb Puncak Jaya, which is actually the next one on my list. And then they shut it down because there was political instability in the area, and they weren't allowing anyone to go do the climbs. And so that was shut down for 2 years. And that was incredibly frustrating to, coordinate time off work, have everything fly all the way there with all of your gear, and then be told, sorry, it's not happening. So I ended up hanging out in Indonesia, bouncing around, went to East Timor, Brunei, a couple of places. So took advantage of the time being over there, but ended up doing a lot of scuba diving instead of mountain climbing, which was great. So no, it has not gone according to plan. Now it's just kind of like, all right, I hope. And now that there's two left, hopefully I'll do Puncak Jaya, the one in Indonesia this year, and then hopefully Everest next spring, as long as things continue to my current plan.
Yes, fingers crossed, all goes well for sure. So, like I said, the last time we talked, you had done three: Kilimanjaro, Mount Elbrus, and then, of course, Aconcagua, which we kind of discussed a little bit more in depth back then. But since then, you've done both Denali and Vinson Massif in that order as well. And, actually, I even didn't get a chance to hear your Denali story. And then I think it kind of seemed to me it sort of kind of came out of nowhere. I think you sort of like announced it very like close to the actual date of you going, if I recall. So let's kind of just sort of start there as well. We'll do the Denali debrief first, I suppose, I'll say. So what kind of led to preparing for Denali? Because from what I've heard about this mountain, it is a little bit more technical. It's quite high, and it's also very remote, which is probably, I think, maybe the most dangerous aspect of this mountain. So talk to us a little bit about like not only just like the physical preparation, but maybe even just some of the mindset preparations that you had to undertake to get ready for Denali.
So Denali, I think my biggest concern with it was the cold. It's one of the coldest mountains in the world. You hit a couple of the other like reasons why it's a little bit more dangerous, but frostbite and cold weather injuries are pretty common on it. So I was two goals, and they're in the reverse order of what they should be, was one to summit and two to come back with all my fingers and toes. And thankfully, both of those happened. It was very disheartening at the beginning. You get right before you go up and the team left, they have somebody from the National Park Service comes, and it's a guide, and they give you the brief on kind of here's rules of the mountain to make sure they keep it clean, safety that they touch on. And his comment was, oh, it's possible to climb the mountain and come back with all of your fingers and toes. I was like, well, that's not reassuring at all. This is my biggest fear, and now you're just like emphasizing it. So I think that was your biggest concern on that one. So I had read the Iceman's book and tried doing some cold weather, like jumping in, trying to see if I could do 5 minutes in an ice bath and a cold plunge, and then do the sauna rotation. So I did that prepping for it. Honestly, I don't know how helpful that was. I did do a lot of hiking that winter just to like make myself uncomfortable, get out, break in some of the new gear that was a little bit more advanced, like heavier duty to prep for that. So I think that was like the biggest prep and difference from the previous mountains was like just the concern about how cold it gets. And that was the first time I was like really, really like -40s going up. And the weather on that one is also just as any mountain, it's unpredictable. That's the thing you can't factor in. And you kind of get capped at the 3 weeks that you have this long to climb the mountain. And, if you don't hit it in that time and the weather windows don't line up for summit days, or you have other issues kind of going up the mountain, a lot of people don't make it for that reason, that they get almost all the way up to the top and then they get stuck there waiting for weather to clear. It doesn't in time. And then they have to head back down, which was, again, one of those things that's out of your control. And as a very control freak personality, I think that's one of the more challenging aspects to deal with when you're just sitting and waiting for weather to cooperate.
Well, yeah, as we've discussed offline, Mother Nature always has the final say, doesn't she? And I mean, I think I've heard some people talk about summiting mountains as like some people will say, how did it feel to conquer like Everest or this, that, and the other as well? And then some people say, well, actually, I didn't conquer Everest. Nature was just nice enough to let me make it to the top this time. I mean, that's really what it boils down to.
Completely agree. This one, thankfully, like Aconcagua, I know we had talked about like bad conditions. The snowstorms are rolling in. They knew we had a limited window. So we were trying to like get up and get down and then got caught in terrible conditions just trying to get off the mountain. They had to send up a rescue team for the other team that had tried to summit that day because they didn't get down time. So I was very fortunate on these last two that summit days like came. We had great weather, very cold still, but bluebird skies, and it just makes a world of difference. It's so much more enjoyable than just, all right, I'm going to like step up there. We're going to enjoy it for a minute and then we're immediately coming right back down.
All right. So you did say that Denali was like probably the coldest mountain in the world. So can you give us a number? Because I'm trying to think of what that might actually be.
Yeah, I think it was just below like -40s. And summit of Vinson Massif actually was a little bit colder when you factored in wind chill. That it was like -43 to 48 was kind of the window. Don't know exactly when like our summit window of what it was up there, but it was still, yeah, in the -40s. It's far too cold. Anything that is negative is far too cold. But again, less wind on Denali, so it was a little bit better.
So you mentioned that they had about like a 3 week limit for those who go out there to make it to the summit and back. And so I guess logistically, how does that sort of play out when it comes to like going up a mountain? Because I guess sometimes I'm under the impression, and maybe this is just me thinking of like hearing your story about Kilimanjaro. It's just you get there, then the next day you just go to the top, and then you come right back down. But it's clearly not as straightforward as that. So can you kind of sort of break that down for us, like how that's sort of like structured to ultimately make it to the summit?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the prep, I think especially in these last two, it's showing up 2, 3 days early to make sure everyone you kind of lay out all your gear, make sure if there's any issues with any of it, and the guys will come through and confirm, like double check it, like, nope, this actually isn't quite heavy enough. You need to get something else that's going to augment or replace this that you're taking up. Sometimes clearing out, all right, you don't need extras of these things. So you really just go through very detailed gear packing, lay everything out, repack it all back up. And then the other major part is like food. And so for Denali, I went through Alaska Mountaineering School and they had a room that you would go in and pack all your snacks, which was incredible. It was an entire room with like every snack imaginable. And I try to eat pretty healthy when I'm at home and like in daily routines, but on the mountains, it's a free for all. Those calories don't count. So you have chocolate candy bars, anything that's easy of just like a quick energy boost that you can have it easily and going up and thinking about like what's not going to freeze that's you can carry with you, beef jerky, all of that. But doing all the food prep coordination, making sure you have really enough for each day. I'm thankful I'm not vegetarian and have no diet restrictions, but for those who do, it's a much more like careful process of making sure like calories required that you're going to have enough. So that's really like the prep days kind of rehearse, like here's, we did some of the glacier rescue in case you fall down on a glacier. And so at the base camp, we're doing like the prep, okay, tie into the rope. Here's what it's like if you fall down, you have your pack on you. How are you going to be pulling that back up? practicing everything with the team, and then fly out to the mountain. So both of those take a little plane, land out at base camp, and then you have big sleds that are behind you. So you carry your main pack with you, and you have a sled with all of the food, the gear, split up the team gear of tents, the cookware, everything else to be able, because you're taking everything with you for a couple of weeks. And then, yeah, hike out to the first camp and set up. And then you get in the routine of pack everything up, move on, load up your sleds, rope in, and then the group moves on to the next camp.
You just made me think of something when you mentioned about like having candies and stuff like that that will last, especially in like a cold weather. When I hiked across Michigan a couple of years ago, a good part of that was actually in winter, and my candy snack out on the trail were peanut butter M&Ms. I freaking loved peanut butter M&Ms out there. And you're absolutely right. When you're moving that much, you're burning so many calories throughout the day. I mean, it doesn't really matter like how much of like that candy like you eat. Once you actually like get to like a place where you can make yourself a meal, you have to like do like a crazy refeed to kind of replenish all those calories. So did you have a favorite treat that you took out with you? Because not only would it help with the calorie replenishment, but also just a good morale boost, as you know, we kind of like to think about when we were in the military, right? You know, just whatever we can do just to keep our morale just a little bit higher in those types of, you know, shitty situations.
100%. I think, yeah, chocolate's anything, big fan of, but also the little gummies that a lot of people take when they're running that just have like the caffeine and sugar and everything. Those are super easy just to like have in a tiny little pocket. Great thing with the climbing gears, you have so many little pockets all over your jackets. And so, yeah, those little gummies are a clutch. But then also when you get to camp and you set up and you kind of boil the water and have your meal, having a hot soup or whatever is just game changing for morale. Like raising that back up when you're that cold. That's wonderful.
And so I take it, like, did you have just like coffee and stuff like that, just to, again, maybe try to have that semblance of normalcy to some degree? Like, you know, if coffee is like part of your own routine, having that in the morning too, just to kind of sort of hold on to that sort of degree of normalcy, even when you're out there in this really, really cold spot.
Yes. And thankfully, I think that's one of the pluses of going with a group is that, you know, they're helping with going out. Because you go out, dig up the fresh snow, make sure it's a clean snow that you're bringing in, and then you have to boil it. So it's a very long process to be able to boil enough, making sure that you're drinking enough water. I think that's a little bit of a pain as well. That's one of the best ways to prevent hypothermia, frostbite, other things. Maybe not hypothermia. I'm probably making that up. But for other cold weather, frostbite, I know, is like making sure that you're hydrated is one of the best ways to prevent those injuries. So you have to be drinking enough water, which is just that much more time for boiling the water and doing all of that. But yes, I do bring like little instant packs of coffee just to make sure that I have a little bit of like boost in the morning before you load everything up and get started.
All right, now going up this mountain, and then of course ultimately making it to the summit. Now, this isn't your first rodeo, as we've been discussing. This was your fourth mountain. Does the feeling of making to the summit, is it the same every single time? Does it lose its luster after a while because it kind of becomes just like a routine? Just kind of describe that for us, like making it to the summit of every single like one of these mountains. Is it kind of just like, okay, there we go. Yeah, another mountain. Or is it as amazing as people would think it would be when you're at the top of a mountain and just seeing this amazing, vast wilderness below you?
I think it's different every time. And I maybe have not climbed enough. Maybe if I had 100 of them under my belt, it would start to lose its luster, but absolutely not. For 4 or 5, I think it's also like it's each so different, the scenery and the views that you're seeing there. And one of the things I love about it is that it's not something that you can just buy. It's not a place that somebody who hasn't earned it can't experience that. In other places, you know, there's cable cars that will take you up to the top of a mountain, or there's a parking lot and you can just drive your car up. I feel like it's especially meaningful because you've had to earn it and you've spent, especially Denali was like almost 3 weeks of climbing this mountain and just the back and forth, and you're climbing up and you're caching your gear. The next day you're going back and you're moving camps. The next day you're going back and digging it up and coming up. So by the time you make it up to the top, it's just incredibly rewarding. And I think also like the beer afterwards, with the first beer when you come down off that mountain, that hits the same. You're like, all right, I earned this one. It's been weeks that I've been working towards this goal. Sometimes like it's actually years that you're working towards the goal of like figuring everything out and making it happen. But after those like hard couple of weeks coming down, you're like, all right, I earned this one.
Yes, I certainly know the feeling that you're describing. A few years ago, I went to Tenerife, one of the Canary Islands off the coast of Spain, and there's this volcano kind of in the center part of the island, and on this particular day when I went to the volcano was also the day I had to fly out in the afternoon. So I didn't have a whole lot of time, but I wanted to see this volcano. And so I did take the cable car up to the very top, got out, and it was an incredible view. And I certainly was able to acknowledge that, but something was just missing, Brie. And I think it's exactly what you described just now. It's like, I didn't earn this view. And then you kind of like look off to like the side of like the viewing area, and then you got people with their packs on that actually hiked up to the very top. And as they were looking over the view, you could just kind of see like in their faces that they were just in complete awe. And I think exactly your point. They earned that view because they actually worked to get up here, where I had to exert minimal effort. I just had to, buy a ticket and step in a cable car. Right. So there is something just very rewarding about like doing hard things. I mean, in this case, we're talking about mountaineering, but I know you also have completed like long runs, and of course you and I have undergone some very arduous military training as well. So I think that's one. Is that like one of the messages that you hope to send with your mountaineering journey, just to show people just the rewards of taking on and completing hard things?
Absolutely. I think it's just so valuable. Again, like to put yourself in a situation where you can fail and continuing to challenge yourself, of thinking, years ago, I would never, before I started these, I never would have thought I would be capable or ever have Everest as a goal. And now to be in a place, I'm like, all right, I'm working toward this. This is like the next, I really want to accomplish this. Absolutely. Like it's great to have those where you're in that risk. Like the Comfort Crisis, great book, Michael Easter, and talking about like the Masobies of like 50-50 and putting yourself where you can fail and you can work that hard and still maybe not achieve it. I mean, that'd be heartbreaking to work that hard and not be able to go up to the summit, but it's still like challenging yourself and you're working towards a goal. I know we've talked about that, of like having that next goal helps just like keep you in drive and like focusing and not just becoming like, okay, well, maybe I'll do that someday. And I always say it like someday is the most dangerous word, because it's just easy to say like someday I'm going to go do that, and like, fuck it, like try it now. If you don't do it, okay, then come back and you'll be better prepared and you'll know what mistakes you made last time and you'll do better.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I had to do with Antarctica. And I think we'll talk about that next. Antarctica was always like, it was the continent that I was thinking about saving for last. Now, actually, I will confess this to you. Antarctica is not my seventh continent. I still have one more to go after this. I have Australia, which I've utilized a similar strategy for Antarctica. And I just told myself, you know what? Epic first. I mean, I was saving Antarctica for last because I thought it was the most epic, but I'm like, well, if it's the most epic, why don't I just do it next, right? So I literally just got online and I threw down like a few $1,000s to put down a deposit for a cruise that was going down to Antarctica. And I just said, all right, it's locked in. No negotiating with the calendar as well. And I'm not going to say someday for this trip, I'm going to go. I got a day planned for it. It's locked in. And and then, of course, I almost didn't make it there. And you've kind of heard that story with my whole air flight fiasco that I had to deal with. But that's a story for another time. So with you now going to Antarctica is just, again, just kind of take us through like the planning process for this one, because like you said, every mountain, they're similar in many ways, but they're also very different in many ways too. I would imagine this one is the most logistically like taxing because of how remote it is. and it is not close to the edge of the continent either. Like this is deep inside the heart of Antarctica. So yeah, kind of take us through just again your mindset and your preparations for Vinson Massif.
Well, first off, I'm very excited for you also to go to Australia. I'm happy that that's like near term. You're gonna go. It's gonna be great. So for Antarctica prep, exactly what you mentioned, like I think the financial side of it is one of the most difficult just because it is so costly to go. So that's part of why this has been a longer term. I've ended up pushing it off even when they started reopening after COVID. I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize how much it was. And so it was years long of like saving to do this, which also adds a little bit of stress of be like, all right, I've got one shot. I really need to make it on this time. But I got to do this one with Elite Exped, which is led by Nims. And I've known him for a while. And I was so excited to finally be able to go and climb with him. And he led it, and Mingma David were a part of it. So it's just like a legendary crew. And being able to go down and do this mountain with them was incredible. And it gives a lot of trust, I think, when you know it's somebody that reputable and you're putting this much on the line and saving and waiting so long to do it, that you want it to be best conditions, best chance of success possible. And they've had 100% success rate every time they've led. So I was very excited to go and do it with them. But absolutely, the logistics of getting down there is just so far, of flying all the way down. So we left from Punta Arenas down in Chile. So just went in, spent a couple of days, did the gear, did the food sorting, and then Antarctica Logistics, ALE, they're the ones who have the flights that operate. And so I was thinking, it's going to be this rugged plane and we're flying down. It was a Boeing 747. Drive out to the runway and you have just a regular plane. And I was shocked. And you have your gear, you get on, step in the little cleaning pad to remove anything on bacteria, everything off of your feet. So it's very environmentally safe to go down, as you know, in Antarctica, being very protective of the environment and snow and conditions. So anyways, board load, regular flight with like snacks being served, Wi-Fi that didn't work. It was so crazy. And then you fly, you finally see like Antarctica in the distance. And then you cross and you're like, oh my God, we're over Antarctica. And then it just keeps going because it is pretty far inland. But then I think one of the bigger challenges for Antarctica is just if anything goes wrong, there's not really an easy lifeline. At least in Denali, there's helicopters that came up, and somebody on that crew on my trip had to be flown off the mountain. He got really bad blisters and it wasn't able to care for them. So he had to get flown off the mountain. At least you kind of have that backup support, not all the way up to the top. And you still have to do a lot to get to the place where they can help, but not really in Antarctica. It's just like, once you get out to base camp, we got stuck there at the end for 4 days waiting for conditions. Like clouds were just in the valley and the planes couldn't come. And so what happens if you do have an accident down there? So I think that was like one of the other things. But again, like thankfully it was a smaller mountain. So it was about 5 days of like actually climbing on it. So a little bit, one of the smaller of the 7, but still just like distance and what that means in terms of backup support. If you forget something, like there's no backups. So make sure you prepare.
I was actually really envious when I heard about how you were going to be getting to the continent, because I got my butt whooped crossing the Drake Passage. Like
more difficult.
Yes, I spent most of like my first day crossing Drake Passage like in bed, because just trying to be horizontal was one of the best ways to deal with the motion sickness. Even with like dosed up on Dramamine, I swear that stuff like didn't help like very, very much at all. And of course, and it's been a while since I've been at sea, so I've definitely lost my sea legs since the last time I was out on the open waters like that. And then just to kind of show how remote Vinson Massif actually is. So I was on the Antarctic Peninsula while you were on the mountain, and you were literally, as the crow flies, 1,000 miles away from where I was. I think sometimes, when people say like Antarctica, it sounds kind of small and simple when you put it like that, but we're still talking about a whole continent here. It is massive. It is huge. And we don't know what kind of secrets that continent holds because it's so vast, but that's how far you were inland. So yeah, if, shit hits the fan where you're at, I mean, it's like, yeah, you guys got to fend for yourself. All right. So upon arriving, we did kind of talk about how this being a very, very protected wilderness area, probably like one of the last like untouched wilderness areas in the world, is just what did that entail as far as you said disinfecting before you're getting on the plane, but also while you're there yourself, because I remember when I was in Antarctica, we weren't allowed to sit down in the snow, we weren't allowed to like put our backpacks or put any things on there. And you certainly couldn't just like, go behind like a rock and use the bathroom or anything like that either. So kind of talk to us a little bit about that, especially as you guys were setting up camp and whatnot.
Well, we lived in the snow, so we definitely got to sit in the snow and sleep in the snow. So a little bit different, but yes, very, very much trying to protect. So anything like leave no trace when you're there. That applies for everything. And I mean, it's difficult because, you have water that you are gray water. You're cleaning your dishes as you're cooking and you're eating your meals and you still want to keep hygiene. And so you're trying to like do the basic rinse, but would still put it into a strainer when you're pouring it out. That way nothing is going down into the snow. And then taking all that. So everything that goes in has to be flown out, which is part of the expense. Like that adds to it because you're leaving nothing there in Antarctica. For base camp, we did have they had little plastic buckets set up for us with a little wall. And it was one of the world's most beautiful toilets, I think. You just had a lovely view. The wall was covered like from base camp, so you couldn't see. You had a little bit of privacy. And then going up the mountain was similar with Aconcagua and Denali, where you have your little wag bag and you have the pleasure of carrying that with you and you're clearing that off the mountain when you come down. So it was still, as much as we could, trying to ensure that you're leaving nothing behind. You're keeping it very clean. You're not throwing anything into the snow. You're very careful at all stages of it.
All right. Well, just backing up a little bit here, I guess what was also just going through your mind, just actually being in Antarctica itself, because we're talking about a place that very few people in the world will ever go to. And of course, like this is your seventh continent that you also made it to as well. So there's another accomplishment kind of checked off your list just as well too. So just kind of just describe that feeling for us. I think before we get a little bit further up the mountain here and just like stepping foot on Antarctica yourself, just describe that feeling for us.
It was, I mean, you're coming in, you land on a blue ice runway that is cleared for landing the planes, and you step off and it's just snow as far as you can see. There's some hills and everything at Union Glacier, which is the little camp that's set up that you do your original fly into. We spent a couple hours at Union Glacier, did our pack up, and then flew out to base camp and then returned back the same way. I got to spend a day or two there. I think especially being out at base camp, there's just nothing. There is no civilization there. In every direction you look, and kind of going up the mountain, it's just you look in the distance and there's other mountain around you. You see a little bit of rock, but it's almost just snow and glacier as far as the eye can see. And it's just like, all right, it just kind of blurs into the horizon of what you're looking at. I think every day I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. I can't believe. And they're like trying to stay as present as possible, which I kind of like the mountain climbs because you're forced to do a digital detox and you don't have them. We had a little bit more on Vinson Massif, but especially in Denali, it was like no cell phone service when you're out there. And so you just have time to be in your own head and talk with the other people who are on your climb. And, I just get way too personal with questions after a couple of days and I start getting bored and restless. But the views there, absolutely. It's just kind of, I think the closest thing I could compare it to is kind of Wadi Rum in Jordan, where it's just like desert and kind of mountains around, but it's all the same. And there's just nothing, no touches of people being there. Yeah, it was incredible. It was definitely trying to like soak it in as much as possible. Like, all right, once in a lifetime, capture and like remember all of this.
Was there any wildlife at all? Because one of the things that I certainly found pretty amazing when I made my first landing in Antarctica, hundreds upon hundreds of penguins, Gentoo penguins and chinstrap penguins, just all over the place. And there was this big fat seal that was just sitting like right on the beach, right by the water too. And so that was just amazing, just to not only to have the first time that I stepped foot on Antarctica to be surrounded by all those animals. Did any wildlife come out your way at all?
Absolutely none.
Oh,
See a single thing while I was there. And that's one of my first questions at Union Glacier. They have, all the penguin pictures. I was like, oh my God, are we going to be able to see? Are there any out there? They're like, no, they're all on the coastline. Like, you're not going to see. The emperor penguins are a little bit further, but still so far away. Exactly what you're saying. Like, it's so far. So didn't see a single like living creature out there other than the people who were out there. But nope, no wildlife. Unfortunately, didn't get the experience of getting to see all the penguins and seals.
all right. Well, you have a reason to go back now because, like I said, it's just when you see more penguins than people over the course of a week, it there's just something. It's hard to put into words. I mean, it's just surreal when you just see like all of these penguins and they outnumber you and like all the people that you're with like 100 to 1. It is just crazy. So I hope maybe you do find your way back to the continent at some point to where you can kind of enjoy the wildlife a little bit more. Yes, because I will say you missed out on a very, very big part of the continent, Brie.
I know. And that's the one that like everyone, so, like everyone's experience with Antarctica that you talk to that has had the opportunity to go is almost always to the coast. And so they're like, oh, I got to do the polar plunge and I saw the penguin. I was like, well, that's very different experience, but it sounds amazing.
Yes, and I did do the polar plunge as well. Yeah, just right into the water. It was pretty cool, but it was cold, of course, but
That
it was
sounds
awesome.
fun.
All right, now, so one of the things that you did say was different on this one was you had a little bit of connectivity out there because you and I were able to stay in touch, and you were able to like kind of keep people updated on your social media as well. So how did you pull that off?
It was a big surprise to me. I thought I was leaving. And so, I tell everyone, like, all right, I'll see you in 2 weeks whenever I get back to the internet. And then again, like Nims and the team brought out a Starlink. And then at like at Union Glacier, they had Wi-Fi at Union Glacier. And it's just like you could sit in the little food hut, the Fram, and jump on Wi-Fi and connect with people. So it was convenient and it was nice to be able to like share, okay, we've made it here safely, alleviate friends and family who are a little concerned with where I'm going. But then, yeah, I also just kind of elected to keep it off for after a couple of days. I was like, all right, I don't need to connect. I'd rather enjoy this again, once in a lifetime to be able to come here and do this. I don't want to there's nothing that I can't see scrolling through social media, catching up on emails and work later. So I tried it to the best of my abilities to use self-control and not use it. But it was nice that it was actually available there.
Yes, it's like the world's going to keep moving whether you're, out there or not, and that's the thing. That was one of the things that I tried to do as well. Like I needed to get on the internet when I was aboard the ship because, again, the whole flights fiasco that I had to deal with, I had to get in touch with the airlines to sort out like a huge mess. But even then, I tried not to like get on like as much because with social media and all the stuff that the algorithm wants to show you, I just kind of thought to myself, you know what? None of this really matters when I'm aboard this ship. It's like, let me go hang with like everyone else. And, I got really close to some of the other passengers aboard the ship and everything like that. So it is just very rewarding, isn't it? It's kind of like getting back to the basics, if you will. When we get out in nature, it's kind of like we're coming back to where we belong. At least that's how I feel when we get out in the wild again.
I think it's so good to be able to like have the time to sit in your own head and be bored for a little bit. Like that's good, I think, for you. Again, like Denali was much easier for me to do it because there was no option of having any internet. I was a little guilty of, I check Slack and try and keep up with what's going on at work. And then I was like, all right, I don't need to do this again. It will be there when I come back. Let me disconnect.
Yeah. So again, like just getting up this mountain here, it's same question as kind of what I asked you for Denali is just, you said that every mountain is different. And then of course you're still, even though you're going for the 7 summits, you're still pretty new to the whole mountaineering world, if you will. So same as before, getting to the summit of Vinson Massif. And like you said, this frozen wasteland as far as the eye can see. Again, describe that feeling for us because now there was because there was a lot of challenges going up this mountain. I mean, you and I, we've kind of talked about that offline a little bit besides just the elements, of course. But yeah, just getting to the top, describe that for us.
was a little bit shorter. Initial like sled pull out, did a cache, went out to the next base camp or the next like camp one. And then the second portion was the only part that was like technical, where you're on a Jumar and it's a very, very steep ascent going up, and then cresting the ridge is just incredible. Like it's very, again, cold with wind starting to hit at that point, and you're on the edge of a ridge line looking down. I think that's my favorite part, is like doing that. You're just like so quickly going straight up. Then you crest over and you make it up to high camp. And then we spent only one night there. So the next morning we went for summit. Again, like super steep or technical. I was surprised there was not lines along the ridge for Vinson Massif. And you kind of get up to one, you're like, I think we're at the summit. And then nope, the summit's still a little bit further. So keep walking. We got to spend a little bit of time at the top, which was nice. The other groups were already heading down. There was only a few folks that were up there. And so we just had time to be able to enjoy it and like soak it in and hold up our flags and get to do a group photo and like talk and just enjoy the moment a little bit, which is really nice when you go that far, not to like pop up and immediately go right back down. And then, yeah, it was just trying to like absorb it when you're up there. And it absolutely is very surreal, like looking around, appreciating like how many things had to come together to make that single moment happen. And it was, yeah, again, once in a lifetime.
Now, of course, coming back down from the mountain, though, it wasn't quite as easy to get out from the continent as it was to get in. So I think you were kind of stranded for a few days due to some weather and whatnot. So what happened there?
So as we were coming down, we came down pretty quickly. So after summit day, we stayed up at the high camp for a night and then packed everything up and headed down. Cleared the next camp, loaded up the sleds, continued down, and then we stepped down into a cloud, and it looked so cool. And we're excited, and we stop, we start taking photos. We're like, "This is amazing!" And then we get down and realize that's also the thing that was going to be blocking the planes from coming in and getting us. So we set up camp, and actually the services provided through ALE, they have a little support that's down at the bottom that kind of do the weather checks and coordinate for planes coming in and out. And they had a little table set up with a champagne bottle, and we all got to drink a little bubbles after the climb. And champagne is my favorite. It wasn't a beach, but I will take champagne in any environment. So we got to have a little celebratory drink. We're all happy. And then the next morning we wake up and there's just like a wall of clouds outside the tent. And we're like, oh my God, well, at least it's going to clear. And tonight we will be flying out. Absolutely not. So where it sits, I guess clouds can come in and it's really difficult unless there's a lot of wind to be able to move them out. So they kind of circulated around. Sometimes it was out like in front of us, closer to the mountain where the runway was. Sometimes it was out. So we just ended up there, and it was the fourth day before we were finally flying out. By that point, you're like, all right, I have had the experience of base camp enough. I am very cold. The weather is getting colder every day. Again, just spending time with your tent mates, getting to know other folks on it. And I think that's one of my favorite things, though, is like you get to know all of the people who are on these trips, and they're doing incredible things, and they're all very impressive people. So it was good. And it was nice to be able to hang out again after a couple of days, fully ready to go off. So there were some cheering when, the planes were finally able to land and pick us up and take us back to Union Glacier. And then at Union Glacier, they have full food. I was amazed at like, they have quality food and you get to eat and drink, and they have beer and wine. And so a little more celebration there. And then they politely reminded everyone with a sign the next day to keep quiet hours in the camp. So we may have gotten a little excessive with the celebration on the back end, but it was such a good time.
Now, really quick, I want to circle back to something that we talked about a little bit earlier about the fact that this is one of the most financial intensive climbs that you've done to date. And And you did say that it took quite a while to save up to get all the funds that you needed in order to do this. So one of the things that I hear from a lot of people who have grand ambitions to go out and seek adventure, maybe not quite to the extent of doing mountaineering like you are, but they want to go places. They want to do cool shit like we do, right? So can you maybe speak to that a little bit about doing the financial planning and just kind of sort of like what went into that? Because I'm sure maybe that might help a lot of people who want to go out and seek adventure, but maybe they're facing their own financial constraints.
Yeah, I will say this one was harder. I try to live well below my means. That way I can save up. I would much rather spend my money going on a big trip. Like that's much more meaningful for me than it is to wear designer clothes or to do like very bougie vacations every year. I think a lot of times though, it seems very cost inhibitive, but then especially when if you get a flight over to Europe and you get a great deal on it, you can travel around so much cheaper. I think domestically, it's very expensive to fly. Like I spend almost as much to fly back and visit family in Ohio as it is for if I get a great deal and I fly to Europe. So traveling domestically, I think sets the mindset that it's like very expensive. And it can be, depending on the trip. But I have bummed around. I did 30 days around the South America when I first got out of the Marine Corps off of active duty. And I probably spent $25 a day when you kind of like rounded it out and averaged it for the trip. So there's definitely a lot of cheap ways to travel, of Airbnbs, again, like looking for deals. I think there's so many ways that you can travel cheaply, and that doesn't make it less of a quality experience. And when you get to places like Thailand and others, that like it's so cheap to get a place, and the food is much cheaper. And so yeah, again, I think there's like all different options depending on where you're at, level of comfort. And if you're ready for an adventure, you can make it happen. In Bali, I spent $12 a day, I think, on a place that was like had a private pool. I had breakfast included, and it was $12 a night. So just depending on where you go, there's definitely ways to make it more affordable. On this one, again, I live below my means, so I try to like save that towards this to be able to make it happen.
Yeah, I do get the question sometimes about like going to Antarctica myself, like because this was like a 5-figure trip on my end to go to sail there, but yet still I'm still debt free and everything like that. So some people wonder like how did you pull that off? Well, similar to you, it's just sometimes you just got to say no to things. I mean. So what was that like for you to it's just like because I'm sure that friends they want to like say, hey, let's go out for dinner, let's go out for drinks, let's do this, like let's do that, all things that are going to involve money. And it may not seem like a lot at the time, but if you're getting coffee every single day, like rather than making it yourself, or if you're buying lunch at work or whatever, that stuff adds up like a lot faster than I think maybe a lot of people realize, like because it may just be like I don't know, $10 for lunch, but well, not in this economy at least. But but I think you know what I mean. So it's just like what was kind of just like, do you have like your own kind of like systems in place when like those opportunities, and I don't know if I'll say temptations necessarily to spend money kind of arise? Like just take us through like those moments and how you kind of stay on track with like saving for your adventures.
Again, I think it kind of comes down to prioritization of like, what are the things that provide you the most joy? For some people, that really is like going to a nice Michelin restaurant, and that's where they derive most of their enjoyment from. For me, it's not that. Like, I will appreciate it. I love going out and having those experiences occasionally, but there are so many ways to kind of play tourist in your own town that's free. Like I live in DC. There's so many museums that are here. There's opportunities to go like do free dancing down on the waterfront in the summertime, close to a lot of parks. So going hiking on a weekend and get friends together. They don't always enjoy it, but sometimes I can actually talk people into like joining me for a miserable hike and drive to Shenandoah and go hike a mountain for an afternoon. So I think again, it's just like, there's nothing wrong with it if going to like nice dinners or like shopping and having new things is your priority. But for me, I think it's easy. It doesn't feel like a sacrifice. And kind of the things that lead up to it are inherently like not that expensive. Like going out and going hiking and like sleeping in a tent and camping and doing all those things is a little bit cheaper. So it kind of helps towards that goal. And also like if you have, I heard something was like if you have three habits of like one that makes you money, or three hobbies, have one hobby that's going to like make you money, have one that's going to keep you healthy, and have one that makes you wiser and you're learning something through it. And so like I tried to do that, like try and find hobbies that facilitate the long-term goals.
And have you come up with some?
For ones that make you money, I think that's a little bit more difficult. I've done like some writing, especially talking about like traveling and doing things like that. So I have found things that still align. And obviously with the blog, I'll do some collaborations and things with that. But yeah, with writing about traveling, like traveling is my other big passion. I'm trying to go to every country in the world is kind of like the next step, I think, after the mountains. And it's something that aligns with my interest, and I try and like develop the skills to support it. So again, I think it's just like depending on your interest and what your skills are, what you want it to get out of it. But if you can find those hobbies, that's great. And with the health ones, like, okay, go hiking, do yoga, do things that are, again, leading towards it and maybe not that expensive.
So speaking of goals, it's we just kicked off 2026, and this episode's probably going to be going live in about mid-February of this year. So what do you have on the docket for 2026? Is another mountain going to be happening later this year, or is that going to be kind of put on the back burner for now? Yeah, just kind of fill us in. 2026, what's it looking like for you?
New year, new me. No, same me, same bullshit. Definitely another. I'm hoping to climb Punta Jaya this year. That's like the big one. Kind of comes down to also like prioritizing time off because you only get so much time off. I am very grateful to work at a place that has unlimited PTO, but obviously I am still I want to do a great job at work. So I try to prioritize the time off to be something towards this. So that's going to be probably my big trip. And then it's close to Raja Ampat, which is an excellent scuba diving location in Indonesia. Not close. It's commute, like I will be able to get there hopefully on the same trip and then go over and visit Papua New Guinea. So that's really like the big goal for this year, in terms of like mountain climbing and working towards it, and hopefully get to a few new countries. I'm at 126 right now, and I have 196 is the endpoint. So hopefully get to a few new places and explore them and spend some time. For Friendsgiving, instead of going to Thanksgiving, I don't believe in having dried turkey and stuffing and doing the stressful family thing for Thanksgiving. I like to go to the Caribbean, and I typically go with a friend or a couple of friends. So hopefully that will be another one, like a great trip. In near term, I'm going to Daytona 500 in February down in Florida. Never been. I figure that's one of like the great American cultural experiences. So those are like near term trips, and again, like the big mountain, and hopefully doing Everest in 27. So saving up a little bit more to go towards that one. And hopefully doing Everest Base Camp with friends and other people who are interested, of like doing that with Elite Exped, like do the Everest Base Camp with friends and folks, and then continue on and go up Everest, hopefully.
Now, again, I'm sure probably a lot of your audience kind of knows you as like, for your travel content and seeking out warm destinations, as we talked about earlier. But of course, as you've kind of sort of revealed in this conversation, you are a very versatile adventurer. Of course, mountaineering, you've mentioned scuba diving. I know you've gone skydiving and paragliding and all these other things. Is there any adventurous activity that you haven't done yet that you think you would like to do at some point?
Base jumping. I'm not there yet. Skydiving, and I've definitely put that on a back burner while I've been doing the mountain climbing. I'm just so nervous of making a mistake and doing like a bad landing and rolling an ankle or doing something stupid. And when you put this kind of investment and like time and effort into the mountains, I'm like, all right, I don't want to mess anything up like right before a climb. So I would love to get to the point where I have enough skill to be able to do at least a couple of base jumps. Probably not a lot because that's not a sport that people have a long lifespan, but I would love to try it at some point.
All right, right on. Well, I certainly look forward to seeing what you have in the future, and I know your audience is as well. But for those of you who might be getting to know you for the first time listening to this episode, where are you out there in the internet space? Websites, social media. How can people follow you?
So I have a website, my blog, where I try and like capture some of the more details, show more pictures than I'm able to, or that I take the time to put on Instagram. Both of them are the Brie Adventure, which kind of captures what I'm doing with all of this. So yeah, those are the two primary spots.
All right, and I'll have them linked up in the show notes for this episode, or if we have viewers watching us talk on YouTube, it'll be down in the description below, so they can go and find you there. All right. Well, Brie, we've been talking for just about an hour now. So as we kind of start winding down our conversation, similar to last time, one of the things I like to ask my guests to do towards the end of the show is to issue a challenge to our listeners and viewers, because, we got to hear some amazing stories from you today, and we also got to get some great insights from you today. But I always say that stories, insights, ideas, motivation, inspiration, all that stuff can really only take our listeners and viewers so far. If they want to go out and do amazing things themselves, they have to take action themselves. So with that, what challenge would you issue to our listeners and viewers today for them to go out there and start living a more adventurous life?
I'm going to try and think of something that I didn't say last time, and I don't remember exactly what I said. It's probably along the same lines, but I would say try a misogi. Look it up, learn a little bit about it. Again, it's a challenge. It doesn't have to be mountain climbing. That's not everyone's cup of tea, which is totally fair. As we talked about, very cold. But find a challenge that puts you outside your comfort zone and you have a good chance of failure. I think it's a good opportunity to push your limits and continue expanding your capabilities and what you're capable of.
And if I recall, it's been a while since I've read The Comfort Crisis, but also didn't he put in the book that for the misogi, you also kind of want to make it semi-private too, because it's something that you're actually doing for yourself. You're not doing it for publicity or recognition or anything like that. So, because I think there was like one of the examples in the book was like some dude like ran a rock underwater for like a good great distance or something like crazy like that, but he told no one that he was going to do it, and then he just had a cool story like kind of out of nowhere. I think, is that how it went down?
Yes, I believe that is a component of it, but then maybe that disqualifies all these mountains because I've talked about them, and he also wrote a book about his misogi. So but yeah, I think that and it's just taking the break. I think digital detox is maybe still a part of it, but it's mostly like finding a challenge of something that I think risk of failure, like risk and harm to yourself is part of it. So there's a lot to it. And that's why I've kind of put these mountains have been my challenges to myself. And after they're done, I'll have to figure out what's going to be my next dangerous hobby and pursuit. But yeah, just encourage, like challenge, looking that up, figuring out what is it personally for everybody.
Yeah, and don't die. I think that was one of the rules of the misogi as well.
Yep, I think that's the number one rule of it. Don't die.
Yeah, just don't die. All right. All right. And so what I have for you next is my final three. Now you've answered these questions before. However, I will admit I didn't go back and actually hear what your answer to recall what your answers were to these final three questions. So we're just gonna go with it again and see if you come up with anything differently. But we'll have to check on that later. So the first of these three questions, and I like to think that these are fun questions, but I will forewarn you, Brie, that these are loaded questions just as well too. And the first of them is, what is your favorite place that you've been to so far?
Oh, I remember what I said. Yeah, it's the more off the grid one. So like Burma, Old Bagan, where there just weren't many tourists, and it still felt like it was very genuine and authentic. And Easter Island, where it's just like it's so far away. I think I really enjoyed those, and I don't know if they've changed. I still appreciate those parts of them, and they're much warmer. I love these summits and I love the experiences, but it is so cold. It's not like a place I'm itching to go back to. Actually, one that I've been to last spring was French Polynesia. I went out to Tahiti and I had the chance to like do some go on a sailing trip out there, and that was incredible. Just the exact opposite of this, warm, scuba diving, hanging out, having drinks on a boat. That was lovely as well.
Yeah, I think Tahiti might actually be a first for as an answer to this question. So far we are 1 for 1 for original answers to these final three, but I got a couple more for you. And the next one is, what is one thing on your bucket list that you have yet to do? And you've already revealed a couple of us, so maybe you can share one that you haven't gone over in this episode yet.
I know that those like I think I've hit my two main ones. There, I do have a lot. I would say another one I'm really interested in doing is writing a book. Still defining exactly what that would be on. The mountains may be something interesting, but I feel like a lot of other people have done it, and the ones that are the most successful are the ones that end in tragedy. And I hope that doesn't happen. But I think that's one that I would be interested in doing. Again, I've done a lot more writing over the years and tried to expand on that, so that would be a fun one.
Okay. Well, we've had previous authors come on the podcast, so sadly that is not an original answer, but that's a great one, though. And I also have the same thing on my bucket list as well. Though I'm thinking probably fiction. You're probably thinking nonfiction, I'm guessing.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like you
Gotcha.
have more of a talent for creative. I'm not that creative.
Well, I mean, I'm okay. I got a pretty cool story in my head. I just got to put it on paper now. So,
Look forward to reading it.
all right, it sounds good. I'll tell you about it offline. It's a surprise. So, all right, and the final of these three questions, and this is a two-parter. What is your favorite animal, and have you seen this animal in the wild?
Now you kind of make me want to like answer something that is very original. But I mean, honestly, like tigers are my favorite. And no, I don't think I've seen one in the wild yet. There's a lot of actually cheetahs is another one, and I did get the chance to see those when I was in Namibia, and that was very exciting. But probably up there with the big cats. Cheetahs was one of them. They're so pretty and they're much more slender when you see them in person. You see them and you're like, oh my god. But tigers is probably the most honest answer, and I know that's not an original.
Well, neither is cheetah, unfortunately. But hey, I mean, well, to be fair, big cats are pretty amazing, and I think we've covered just about every big cat from for answers to these questions. So, well, this cheetahs, as you're describing, just when you look at an animal that's just built for a specific purpose to be the fastest land animal in the world, it's amazing. So I'd love to see one in the wild myself.
Yeah, that would be so cool. I think one of the coolest I've seen was in the Galapagos, the little marine iguanas that they're swimming in like underwater. That was one of the coolest, but that would be a complete lie to say that was my favorite. It was interesting to look at, but.
All righty. Well, Brie, that's it. That's all the questions that I have for you tonight. But before we call it a day here, let's just recap one more time where our listeners and viewers can go connect with you. So again, websites, social media accounts, what do you got for us?
All of the above are under the Brie Adventure. And please look me up. Send me ideas if you have a new challenge that I should take on.
Okay. Now you got the wheels turning in my head. What can I challenge you on?
Challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get back to you on that one. I'm sure I'll come up with something. So, all right. Well, Brie, I want to thank you very much for taking the time for joining me tonight. And I will certainly get everything linked up in the show notes for this episode or down in the description below if everyone's watching us talk on YouTube. But it's been great to connect with you these past couple of years, and I certainly value our friendship. And I'm rooting for you as you continue on seeking out all these amazing adventures. I can't wait to see where you go next.
Same. And I'm so excited for you. It was amazing that we just like ended up on our two like once in a lifetime trips to Antarctica the exact same time. What a cool coincidence of timing of it. Love it and love what you're doing. Keep it up.
All right. Right on.